Do you ever read a comment and it just completely sets off a light bulb and then a chain of light bulbs after that? It's Romania Black, and that just happened to me last week. We're on episode 7 of Ping Pong, and I've been obsessed with this series, but it didn't take me until a comment with episode 2 to make me realize I have missed a whole host of symbolism. And I felt so mad at myself for missing all of this symbolism, but we're going to talk about it. And that's why Whiteboard Coon is behind me with things to say. But first, I want to go through a couple comments before we start. We're on episode 7, episode 6 last week. In love with that episode. In love with it. You love ping pong more than you care about anyone else. And it's all following those 4 trajectories with Kong, with Peco, with Smile, and with Kazama. I'm still obsessed with the whole Kazama and Yui and Sonata storyline. Still obsessed with it. I want to go karaokeing with Wingay and his team. I'm having the time of my life watching this show. And I love episodes like that kind of, they deviate away from the matches and allow you to like get into the characters themselves. And that was just such a perfect episode to do it, especially at the midway point of the series, which I'm so happy we're just at the midway point. But anyway, H Banana 7, who has just started this series, which I've been recommending it to everybody because they need to be watching this, said that Uchida Yuma, who plays Ash Lynx from Banana Fish and a host of other roles like Megumi from Jujutsu Kaisen, is a nameless extra in episode 1. Why not? And then also the Skate the Infinity main character is as well. The old lady, though, Obaba, who is like, just came out front and center last episode, is voiced by the voice actress for Goku. I'm like, what? So basically Goku's voice actress is voicing the old lady in the table tennis hall. Oh my God. I love it. I guess it'd be Kid Goku, but still amazing. So thank you for that information. Killer Queen 2000 for episode 3 says, I'm glad you noticed the person with the butterfly at the back was not Smile. No, it was Kozumi. And that's what I love about this show. There's so many visual cues that flash by, and some can only be picked up and realized, be nice, while re-editing and watching. I remember that these one reactors, Semblance of Sanity, had similar things happening while watching the show. I'm really glad that I am not the only reactor that misses things. That made me feel a lot better because I have very high expectations of myself and I love analyzing things. So when I miss something really obvious and then it comes back to me and somebody's like, oh yeah, this was the symbolism I got. And I'm like, I was like, how did I miss that? So that's where we come into episodes 2 and 4. Alexander Q, who has been following the channel for quite some time, I was like, I feel so pissed that I missed this. And I was like on episode 6 when they pointed this out in episode 2. But they were like, Pico is an interesting character to me in the episode. He seems to be both aware of Smile holding himself back and his potential, and also surprised by it, which we did talk about in the episodes. I can't tell whether he's pleased by his friend besting the coach or not. As emotional as he is, he always seems to be cryptic, which is a fun combination for us, the viewers. Pico's always been super interesting because he's kind of a sore loser, and he gets really emotional, but a lot of it is because he wants to win and do well. But we've talked about like his laziness and like just giving up and running away until last episode when Sakuma was like, no, you're not going to run away, bitch. And I'm like, yes. But then Alexander Q, I have thought this entire time that the 2 robots were inside of Smile and they were just 2 robots fighting for Smile's attention and which one is Smile going to embody. And I hadn't thought about it this way until Alexander Q pointed out, saying to me, the hero that Smile's always looking for and that we see first is Pico. And I was like, son of a bitch, it is. Whether Pico actually helped him to fight the bullies who had harassed Smile to the point that he was locked in the lockers, which we don't know. We don't know if Pico fought the bullies. We know that he stood up for Smile before in previous episodes, though. Or simply saved him from being alone and scared of the world by giving him a friend. I think that it impacted Smile tremendously and became a light in Smile's life. Thus, he's incapable of besting him or taking his dream away from him. As we see, Pico says he wants to be the best in the world. And then we see the robot Smile decide he can't stifle his ambition, his own dreams, just for Pico's sake anymore. And thus we have him ruthlessly winning against the coach. But I love your take on it a lot. And I was like, while Smile being both the hero and the robot is a fascinating idea. So yeah, no. And then last episode, they said this for episode 2, and I just got done watching episode 6, and I'm like, no, that makes sense because we have the robot running rampant in the beginning of the episode, and now it all makes sense. And they talked about the hero being dormant, and Smile has always said, enter the hero, and he's been questioning Pico the whole time, being like, do you believe in heroes? And Pico doesn't answer him, so he doesn't know what to do with it. It's just like everything now, it's like a light bulb just went off, and I was like, no, all this makes sense now. And then to add to that, Alexandra Q said for episode 4, the parallels between Obaba and Koizumi and Pico and Smile are great, with Obaba being all about winning and saying that how she thought that if she didn't win, there was no point in playing, which is just like Pico, and Koizumi apparently being more sensitive and holding himself back, which is just like Smile. And it's fun that both Smile and Pico gravitate, whether willing or unwillingly is another thing, towards the coach that they are more similar with, even though neither of them know it. Yeah, Alexander Q, I don't know if you're telepathic or if you just need to take over the series and do all the reactions for it, because I was like... am I dumb? Did I miss all of this? I feel like I've let you all down by not getting this very obvious symbolism and pointing it out, right? But basically... Again, we have Koizumi and we have Obaba, the two coaches that have played against one another. They have history with each other, and now they have each of their proteges, one being Smile and one being Pico. I want to call Pico Smile so much because he's the sunnier of the two, but y'all know about how I do. I do like that Koizumi and Smile both have the butterfly motif going on, that it's all about transformation, and the coach sees in Smile that he too could evolve and metamorphosize like he had done in the past, hence the butterfly thing from episode 3. But we have Smile, who has this akin to a robot, like the robot running rampant last episode is Smile running rampant with all of this power and ambition, but he doesn't really have anywhere to focus it. He doesn't have a rival. I mean, Kazama could be his rival, technically, but Kazama's off in a different level right now. But he wants to be the hero like Pico, but he has desires beyond, and he's struggling with his ambitions and is frustrated because Pico is not playing any longer, or so he thinks, right? And then we have Pico, who is with Obaba. Both are sore losers. Both are obsessed with winning. Both want to be the best and know what it is going to take to get there. But Pico got Smile into playing ping pong. He's Smile's hero. He didn't believe in himself, but Sakamo's helped him see the light, and he is the light to Smile. So it's potentially setting up this rivalry between Pico and Smile. The question is Pico going to be able to catch up and catch back up with Smile? I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work. If that's going to be possible, or what we're going to do with that, or if Kazama is going to be the main person to take care of this round, or what. I just feel really excited to see where this series takes us and what we're going to get from it. So basically that's it. So thank you, Alexander Q, for pointing out things I was like, oh, welp. Better late than never, right? Better late to figure out the symbolism than never, right? Of course. So I appreciate you all commenting and watching this series with me. Sorry it took me that long to find the most obvious symbolism in the series, but we have found it, and now we're good to go. Right? So anyway, I'm super excited for this reaction and discussion. I hope you all are too. I'm just going to leave Whiteboard Coon hanging out in the wings while we watch this, but we are going to check out episode 7 of Ping Pong. I am so excited, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do it to it. Y'all, this show doesn't miss. I'm in love with Ping Pong. I'm so in love with it. Next week's the rule of 8, and 8 is my lucky number, and I have a rule about 8th episodes in short series. We'll see how that goes, but oh wow. The one thing that I'm really curious about, and obviously this would be a major spoiler, so I don't want you telling me the answer to this question, but I'm very curious to know if they're clearly setting this up to be a similar situation to what happened with Koizumi and Ryu, who is the guy that is running Kaio, and the whole situation of if, the one guy had an injury and Koizumi decided not to take advantage of that injury and he didn't advance. And what ended up happening was Ryu ended up advancing, becoming this hero, founding the academy, and there we go. And so, and it all went from there. So it seems like it's setting it up where the same thing is going to happen between Peco and Smile. That Smile is going to get to this match. Pico's going to have the leg injury, and Smile is going to have to either not take advantage of that or take advantage of it to beat his friend. And the question is going to be, which is he going to do? Because coach is like, well, could you do it? Could you take advantage and do something underhanded and exploit the injury of your fellow competitor, knowing good and well that exploiting that injury, you could lead him to ruining his entire career? And Koizumi couldn't do it. Would Smile do it? I don't think that he would, but then there's a part of me that thinks that he might. And then there's another part of me that kind of doesn't want this to be a repeat of history. I don't want it to be like a parallel of what happened back then. I want it to have a different outcome. So I don't know. But then they've been setting up this entire time the idea that Peco kind of resents the fact that Smile has gone easy on him. So if Smile didn't try every trick in the book, would Peco not respect him? So it's setting all of this up. And we're going to have to keep getting further to know, like, but they just, you can tell in the background, you can see the pieces and the parallels and like history repeating itself, setting up in the background throughout this episode. And I was like, So I'm very curious to know how they're going to end up handling it, but we'll go from there. So I like the idea that we get Kong's team, and each of them are all doing their own separate things. Kong is training them that when you learn to see it, the ball will move more slowly. He's like, if you can learn to see the numbers on the ball as they spin. So we have Kong over here, and Kong is helping his team like he's been doing. They are Team Kumbaya. And then not only that, but he's also training to rematch Kazama, which I think is really interesting. Because, you would think that Kong would rematch, Smile at some point, but that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems like Kong's, rivalry isn't necessarily with Smile, but with Kazama, the person who didn't go easy. And again, that ties to the fact that Kazama didn't go easy on him. He literally took him to task, whereas Kong, doesn't know for sure if Smile went easy on him or not. We don't know. We don't know that, but we get that commercial. Good job on the editors of that commercial. That commercial is actually really good. I would want to buy those shoes after watching that commercial. I would be all for it. Leap into the world, the first match shoes with Poseidon, the dragon. They're like, he's so cool. And then they see how mad Kong is about the commercial, and they're like, oh, actually, he's really lame. He's not cool at all. So then we have Obaba training Peco. And I am not surprised that Obaba's thing is, look, you can't even pick up a paddle and hit a ball until you are physically fit. So I like the idea that Pico's got the haircut, Pico's getting back into shape, getting back where he can do the basics. I like Obaba putting him to task. But I also like the idea that with Peco and Obaba, they view themselves like a couple. One thing that I kind of love about this episode and about this series in general is they aren't afraid to use terms like say you love me and couple, and there's nothing sexual about it at all. Well, at least not for Peco and Smile and their coaches. Now within Kaio's team, it's a whole different story. But I do love the fact that Peco and Obaba have this relationship of like, we're a duo, we're a couple, it's mentor and mentee, like student and coach, like, but it's not viewed ever in a sexual way. It's literally just, they're going to take each other to new heights. And Obaba tells Koizumi, I'll move that over just a hair. Obaba tells Koizumi saying that you guys have to form this type of relationship. Because, and we'll talk more about what Obaba says to Koizumi when Smile runs off, but Obaba's like, you've got to form a bond with the person you're working with, or you got to let him go. because at some point you're going to need to have that bond in order to keep advancing and moving forward. I'm proud of Peco. I really am. I love seeing Peco put in the work. And it's so refreshing because that's been what's frustrating me about Peco this entire season, has been that Peco has talent. If he put in the work, he could be so good, but he had gotten so complacent that he didn't want to put in the work. And it was like, but you could be doing so much. And now it's one of those things, like in Smile's case, him putting in the work and taking all the time to make himself better, you kind of are like, wow, you don't even want to win. You're just doing that. That's impressive. But with Peco, if you're going to go out there and say, I'm going to be an Olympic gold medalist in ping pong, you can't just skate by. You've got to put in the work that a gold medalist would put in. And so I'm so proud of him to see him actually training and wanting to get better and doing whatever he can. And I kind of like this, what they do together is that Peco is like, I want to train with the best that I can, but I also want to involve my coach. And so they go to that training hall, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. Whereas Koizumi kind of has this one moment of doubt where that's when he tries to get Kaio to come, because he's thinking, I don't know if I can push Smile to where he needs to be. He's like, I don't know if I'm strong enough to do that, which Obaba kind of takes him to task for, right? I also love the idea of seeing the guys in the one training hall that are like getting into table tennis again. They kind of went through the 5 stages of grief. They were angry about it. They were bargaining whether they'd be on the team or not. They were like in denial of Smile and everything. And now they've kind of moved on to an acceptance, and they're slowly kind of getting more encouraged to play ping pong and to get back into it alongside Smile. And Smile's not actively been trying to motivate them. They just kind of have come full circle, right? I will say, whenever Obaba's like, come up here and give me a kiss, and Peco nearly throws up in the bushes, that part was great. I love that. I also like this one guy in the hat that just showed up last episode. I thought he was literally a delivery man, and he's now part of the team, which is funny. I love it. But the moment that Smile walks in with his moon jacket, the black jacket looking like Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi, I feel like, and maybe it's because they have the same voice actor, but I feel like Smile is literally, what if Tsukishima from Haikyuu was team captain? And this has been our response. But I like that he's so cold. He's so cold and robotic. And we know that Smile is not actually like that, but he projects that aura and he leans into it. And the other guys just kind of, they fall for it, right? But he's waiting to get the new balls in that Oda has ordered. And then in walks Kazama, saying that your fish aren't going to grow if they're in stagnant water. They'll never change. And then he just throws the ball away. The most heartbreaking part was as the coach for Kaio and Kazama show up, seeing the coach out on the school bench, like he didn't want to be there during the meeting. Like he didn't want to influence Smile in his decision whether to go with Kaio or not. But he also didn't want to be there if Smile said yes. Like that would have broken his heart. And it was so sad to see him on that damn bench. I was like, no. I was like, don't let Smile leave. I genuinely wondered if he was going to. Because part of me thought, if Smile is ambitious and wants to keep getting better and better and better, I'm like, would he leave? Would he go with Kaio? But on the other hand, I was like, Smile does not like what Kaio represents. Smile does not like the kind of authoritative, kind of regime-like militaristic practice. Like that's just not Smile. That's not how he views things. And Smile wants to do things for his own personal exploration and what he considers to be fun and what he values individually, but he does not value winning necessarily. He values his own strength and growing and becoming a better person, whether he wants to admit it or not, but he's not like, we're doing this for the lineage and for the legacy, which is Kaio's whole thing. And that's not Smile. So I'm glad Smile didn't go with them, but I genuinely wondered for a second if he was gonna. I was like, ooh, I don't know if that's gonna happen or not. But I like Obaba finally gets him to the time, and she's like, now we're gonna go back to the training hall. And he's like, yes. And he's like, I love you, Obaba. I love it. And we make the best couple ever. And she's like, maybe we do. Because they're so similar, right? So we go back to Kaio trying to woo Smile over, saying all you need to bring is yourself. And I like that the one coach is trying to like, now the coach, as we come to find out, if we get this family tree going, right? We have the Kazama family tree. We're going to put that up here. The Kazama fam tree. We have Kazama Ryuichi. And his mom is his dad is Nori. And the mom is Emito. Right? So we have the dad and the mom is Emito and Nori. Now I'm going to switch these because I think Nori is I'm going to put this down just a hair. I think I have my family tree too much. So we have Ryuichi, Kazama. And his mom is Emito, Auntie Emito. And his dad is Nori. And Nori was the florist and had the flower shop, right? That was their business. And then we'll go with here. And then we have this other guy that is the coach, correct? The coach right now of the team and someone. And their daughter is Yuri. Okay. So yeah. So Yuri and Ryuichi are cousins. And she likes him. I mean, I live close to Kentucky, so I get how that goes. She has a love for her cousin. I'm like, okay, girl. We're branching that tree a little close. But anyway, we'll come back to them. But I like how the coach was like, just like, oh, he was trying to be a salesman, being like, oh, you don't need to bring a paddle. You just bring yourself. Bring yourself, Smile. We got everything you need. We got the gym. We got the shoes. We got the hookup. And then Ryuichi kind of just cuts through all that. And he's like, you need to come here. Like, he's not a salesman. And he kind of says, if you keep playing in this hellhole, your talent's going to rot away. And Smile, and I like the coach is like, hey, wait a minute, hold on. And even the principal's like, does Koizumi know about this? And they're like, of course he knows. He's agreed to it. But I now see his jacket says Joe on it, Butterfly Joe. But I'm like, he agreed to it, but I think that's because he doubts himself and he thinks that he's 70 and he can't keep up with Smile's potential and he wants the best for Smile, right? He said, with your future in mind, it was a very clever idea. That doesn't mean he likes it, but he's like, if you want to think of your future, this is what you need to do. And that kind of sets Smile off because he's like, my future? Because Smile's whole thing is, Smile doesn't like people telling him what to do and trying to determine things for him without consulting him. So you can tell Smile's kind of aggravated because he's like, you didn't talk to me about this. You didn't say whether this was a good idea or not. You didn't talk to me. You just kind of were taking my own. He's like, you were basically predetermining what I would think without even asking. And you can tell Smile's kind of like thrown off by that. And then, so the one coach says, I didn't know that he was teaching here. And he's like, I'm surprised. And Ryuichi asks who he is. And he says, Butterfly Joe. He's my hero. So there's a big notion about heroes in this series of who is whose heroes. And the coach, his hero is Koizumi. Which is so interesting that the coach says that Koizumi is his hero. Because his dad or father-in-law, whichever it is the one that is the hero that beat Koizumi. So it's like, what a wild thing to say. So, because yeah, he faced up against him, which is so wild. And then Smile's hero is Peco. And Peco, I'm assuming, maybe Pico's hero is Smile. Kazama Ryuichi says he has no hero. He doesn't have anybody that he looks up to. It's him against the world, right? And then Smile's like, no, I don't want to leave yet. He's like, well, he pushes his glasses up with a middle finger, almost like him saying, I'm not going with you all. And then they're like, nope, don't worry about it. His goal is neither greatness nor success. Some table tennis players play that way. Which kind of is like Koizumi's thing. Koizumi played for fun and because he liked it. And so him and Smile are very similar. And maybe that's why this coach for Kaio kind of likes him, because he's not doing it for fame and glory. He's doing it, for the love of the game. And that's why he appreciates it. And so they ask about, he says the old man. What does he say there? He says the old man, Koizumi-san and Nori-san. Oh, lots of variation in table tennis. He was wrong. He had no talent. And that's when he says, no, you're wrong. Do you play table tennis in a way that you believe in? I love that. I love that the coach is like, don't get on to Koizumi because he wasn't playing the same way that you do. Do you even really know the purpose in which you're playing? I like that he takes him to task. And I love that the people in Kaio, they don't ever except for Sakuma. Except for Sakuma, they don't yell. They don't scream at each other. They just are like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you thinking about this? And it's handled so maturely and adult. I love it. And he says, I'm worried about the way you're playing and about what is the future and what you're playing. So then we get Nori. So Nori-san, I think also, is his name Nori too? I'm curious. We're going to go back to this. But we see the funeral where we assume it's Kazuma's dad has died. And they say, you don't see many garlands because they're not popular. Like that was the wrong thing to put up because it wasn't the right choice. And he says, Ryuichi, order 5 of them. You don't see a lot of garlands because they're not popular. You should order 5 of them instead. And then, and Amiko-san, at a time like this. This part here, you got sick because your husband's a terrible salesman. I was like, she looks bald in the picture, which makes me wonder if she was terminally ill. And that one guy was suggesting, the grandpa was suggesting that she was sick because Nori was a bad salesman. I was like, oh my God, that's a terrible thing to say. That's a horrible thing to say to someone, that the reason why you're ill is because your husband wasn't a good businessman. And it looked like Ryuichi was about to go and attack him. And she says, no. She says, I'm fine. Among relatives, certain rules have to be upheld. You must endure this. So she's suggesting because he's family, you can't fight him. Just endure it. And then they're at the train stop. So yeah, so basically the old man insulted Ryuichi at his dad's funeral and then suggested that the reason why she wasn't well was because he was a terrible businessman. What an asshole. Oh my God. So yeah, then they're waiting on the train. They're like, who would your hero be? And Kazama, of course, doesn't have a hero. So I like that he says he doesn't have a hero and he's putting his head back against the poster of Yuri, which is so wild to me because to Yuri, Kazama is like her hero. But he doesn't even know it. He doesn't even know. And I think that's also so symbolic in that moment that he puts his head up against her poster, but he doesn't even recognize what he's doing. He doesn't even notice her there. Meanwhile, Sanada, Yuri's poster takes up his entire world. And so it is such a contrast. We're going to talk about Sanada and Yuri. Don't you worry. But yeah, the coach is like, I'm sorry if I offended you. But with no more experience than I have, teaching you is beyond my abilities. You'll grow more if you go there. And I could tell why Smile was mad because he's like, you're pushing me away without even talking to me about it. Like, to Smile, it probably feels so dejecting to be like the coach. He's like, because Smile's like, I've worked with you and I have done everything you've told me to do. And now suddenly you're like, well, there's nothing more I can do. I guess go somewhere else. Like to Smile, that must felt like such a slap in the face, which is why he runs away because he's like, he's just trying to process it all. And I knew as soon as he started running, he was like, Coach, I'm the one who got Sakuma kicked off the team. What would happen if I went to Kaio? And the coach is like, oh, well, I didn't think you cared about that. And then Smile says, I have feelings too. And that's when Smile is like, you didn't ask me about getting me recruited to the team. Because in that moment, Smile is like, do you realize that Sakuma and Peco and I have history? That we grew up together? That I literally took one of my friends from childhood friends may be a strong word, but he's like, the kid I grew up with throughout my childhood that tried everything in his power to get onto Kaio's team, I got him kicked off. Smile's like, do you realize what that would be like if I went to that team after I got him kicked off, what that would do to him, what that would say about me? And then, of course, when Koizumi is like, oh, well, I didn't think that you cared, and Smile's like, I have feelings. He's like, I may look like a robot, but at the end of the day, he's like, I do have feelings too. He's like, I get depressed. I get happy. And the coach is like, yeah. Like, the coach realizes instantly that he kind of overstepped without talking to Smile about it. And then Smiley's like, let's go. And he takes off. And he's like, you can't keep up that pace. And he just keeps running. Which I feel so bad for Smile because, yeah, the one person who has treated him like a real human being throughout all of this, in this moment of asking Kaio to come, Smile's like, I'm not a commodity. I'm not a robot. And I thought that you knew that. And he gets mad and he runs away. Now, I'm glad it all got worked out in this episode. And I was like, I don't think Smile's actually going to run away. But, So, meanwhile, speaking of which, Peco is like, you've been teaching at this huge training hall, sucker. Impressive. And he's like, Peco, this isn't a training hall. So we get this new guy. He's like, this isn't a training hall. Only those whose potential is recognized by the country can enter this place. So we see Japanese National Training Center coach, Michio Tamura. So we meet Tamura, who is this new guy. And he is with the national Japanese team. Now, I am not surprised that Obaba's got connections because she used to be an amazing ping pong player herself. So it makes sense. She's got him hooked up. I mean, again, this was such a contrast because you have Smile, who's rejecting playing at one of the top schools to get stronger and is kind of like staying with the coach to spite it. And then you have Peco, who Obaba is kind of like leaning Peco into embracing the idea of another school training him. And Obaba kind of takes a step back. But the difference is Obaba communicated with Peco, told him about the training hall, told him about the school, went with him, got him hooked up and synchronized into it, and has slowly been weaning herself away. Versus Koizumi, who was just going to like cold turkey, be like, here, go with Kaio, bye. And so you can see the impact that both of those decisions have had and how different they are. So yeah, that means Pico's been recognized. There are rules. I like that he's like, Mom. And then they're like, oh, ping pong girl. Don't call me a sucker. Take him inside already. I love it. So this is Hoshino and he'll be training with us starting today. I love that he's like, everybody calls me Peco. All right. And then there we go. And they start training. Okay. Don't take your eyes off the ball. I love it. I love how massive Tanama is. He's just huge. And Pico's like, this is tough. But Pico's not running away. And he gets mad because of how tough it is, but he's accepting the challenge. And he knows, I feel like Obaba also realizes that Peco needs positive reinforcement. So when she takes him to the Japanese hall, she's like, only those recognized as good tennis players are allowed to stay. Ergo, you've been allowed to stay. So you're a good tennis player and you're worthy. So she kind of psychs his ego up a little bit, right? Meanwhile, Smile just keeps running. The robot lost his cool. And that's when the guys at the tennis hall say, considering how complex he is, it'll be tough to fix him. Which is actually easier to say. He's actually easier to fix than you think, right? Because Oda sticks around and the coach sticks around and they both kind of help him. So I feel like they don't give Smile the benefit of the doubt in that moment. Because he decides to go back. And that's when Obaba's like, did Smile run away? And he's like, yeah. I tried calling his house, but no one answered. And then Obaba knows the scoop on everybody. So we find out that, as we may have suspected, Smile's parents split when he was young, and the mom stays out until night. She doesn't come home, or she doesn't come home until morning, which you can make whatever you want out of that. Does she see somebody else? Is she at somebody else's house? Does she work late into the evenings? Is she doing other work? We don't know. We don't know. But he's like, I thought I was being considerate. And she's like, well, that's why he's running away from you, because you're always like that. Just hesitating when you try to gauge someone's mood is going to bother people more than anything. If you really love him, hold him close and kiss him, or let him go. I love it. I love that she's like, if you're going to coach him, go 100% in, coach him, go all in and fight till the death. Or if you're going to bow out, then bow out and just accept defeat now. She's like, then let him go otherwise. But I feel for Smile because it's the first time we see him really kind of let loose and show all this emotion in this moment. Now, for me, when he ends up on the street and says, you know, this is stupid, and he's standing outside the one hall, he says it's stupid that he keeps running. And then they look down and they're like, the sucker's gonna be mad. Wake up, Peco. Like, he literally looks down and there's Peco with his siblings, as we come to find out. Peco has a bunch of little siblings. And they're all trying to get him up because they're like, don't call him a sucker. And they're like, we gotta wake Peco. Now, this part was kind of heartbreaking because Peco is exhausted from training. And the siblings are trying to wake him up to get him to go back to the tennis hall. The thing about it is, I don't think Smile knows that Peco is training at this point. I don't think he knows. As far as Smile knows, Pico's just wasting away and has collapsed on the side of the road and has been drunk or something, kind of like he was last episode when he got drunk off those chocolates. For all Smile knows, Pico's just passed out in the bushes and the siblings are trying to wake him up. But the thing about, they're like, what should we do? And then we see Peco looking up into the sky the same way that Smile did. What blew my mind is that Smile didn't help him. Smile didn't help him up. Like, that's supposed to be his friend, and he just kept running. Then we get the flashback to Peco talking about the win. The win was made possible by the supportive cheers of my fans. And he says, my dream is to win Olympic gold, of course. And to appear in a Akagi Dairy commercial. I mean, makes sense. But then, as Peco, like, snaps his eyes open, that's when Smile takes off and starts humming. I'm like, I wanted Smile and Peco to talk, but the two of them are in a place where they can't talk to each other yet, because Smile thinks that Pico's given up on table tennis and that he's not following his dream anymore. And Pico's not ready to face Smile yet. So it was just like, it was such a missed opportunity. But it's like, damn it. And then Smile slowly starts to walk back. I love that shot of him walking back in the train and everything. It's so good. And he goes back and sees the coach sitting there. I love the moment that him and the coach have the conversation. And you can see the cold air. Like, the coach has been sitting there where it's cold, just waiting on him. This old man. I don't want anything bad to happen to this old man. I worry about him a little bit, right? I worry about him a little bit. But he's like, I told you before, a coach doesn't exist without his players. Like, him just watching after him. I love it. I love this moment of him being like, I'm not giving up on you. We're going to stick this through. I love that. And what that means to Smile in that moment. He's like, try it again. Try to run away from me again and I'll hit you. Okay? Are we clear on that? And he's like, do you understand? And when he says, yes, my coach. And he's like, good. I'm like, that just melted my heart. I loved it so much. And like, it was midnight when he came back. I'm like, the coach and athlete, like, mentality and relationship is so good in this series. I love it. So yeah, they get up in the morning, ready to go. And he says, it must be hard on you spending Valentine's Day focused on table tennis, which Smile is like, I don't have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. So he's like, it's not hard. And he's like, it doesn't bother you? And he's like, no. And that's when he says, well, what do you say to being my date? And I like that Smile doesn't say no. He's just like, okay. And it's kind of a callback to the beginning of the series where the coach said the same thing. And Smile was like, I'm not going on a date with you. And now he's just like, okay, we'll go. So then we have the sports place. This part was interesting where Oda, they're like, we're closing down. Take something with you. So the sports shop was closing down, which is interesting because I don't know if that's saying anything about like the consumerism of like Poseidon having a big industry and it's closing the little guy down. I don't know if that's saying anything specifically, but he's like, no. And he's like, well, don't you play table tennis? And then he sees he opens it up and sees the tennis balls. And he's like, these are amazing. He's like, take them with you. And he's like, oh, no, I'll pay for them. And they're like, they're just going to be melted down for the plastic. Okay, when we saw the boxes there, I thought they were the shoes. I thought that when he looked at the shoes, they were the new match tennis shoes because they had the purple Poseidon box on them. I thought that's what they were. And then when they said they're going to melt them down, I'm like, didn't those shoes just come out? But no, they were the ping pong balls. So Oda didn't order the balls like he said he was going to. But instead he finds some Poseidon ones that were about to be thrown out and takes them instead. Oda. Meanwhile, you have the one coach who has got a training machine made by Poseidon. So there's something to be said about that. That's this new table tennis robot. And I like that Wenge almost looks like embarrassed to use it because he's using Poseidon's own robot to train himself to face Kazama. So they're like, we put all the data on Kazama that we had on it. Now I know from Ace of the Diamond in that series that one of the schools that has lots of money, they bought like a pitching machine that can imitate pitches. So apparently this school's got some cash to burn. They got a grant to buy this, it'll help you train. I like Wenge's but Wenge says thank you. You know what? He could be ungrateful. He could be snide, but he says thank you instead. So then we have the one guy. I think his name is Nori too, the coach, which is Yuri's dad. He says a prayer, and it's for I guess it's his brother. Is that it? So I guess the two brothers had the flower business, right? And the one brother died, and the other brother became the coach. And Ryuichi's mom maybe wasn't related to the family. What's interesting is the chocolate making scene. This scene is any scene involving Yuri, I'm kind of obsessed with because she's such an interesting character. So she has the mold that looks like a paddle, right? And he says, for your birthday, and gives the gift. And she says, thank you. And then she brings him the chocolate and says, and you can have this. And it says, thanks for everything. And he wants bitter coffee to drink. I'm like, all coffee is in some sense bitter. She's like, why was I born on Valentine's Day? And he says, sorry. I like these, sorry you were conceived to be born on Valentine's Day. Sorry about that. But she says, all I do is give. No one remembers it's my birthday. So there's a little bit of conceitedness there with Yuri, but that checks out with her character. I kind of feel for her because I have had friends that are born on or around Christmas, and they say the exact same thing. Everybody's always giving Christmas gifts, and nobody can celebrate your birthday and all of that. And Yuri just wants to be recognized. And you can't blame a girl for wanting to be recognized. She's like, nobody remembers it's my birthday or gives me anything. And then the dad says, he cuts in and says, it's also the day that Nori-san died. And I was like, oh my God, what is with this family and how dramatic it is for no reason? All he had to do was be like, yeah, it sucks that your birthday's on Valentine's Day. Instead, he's like, oh yeah, by the way, my brother died on the day you were born. And it's like, I mean, not the literal day she was born, but oh my God. So this scene where he eats the chocolate, because he cuts the also, him cutting the chocolate paddle with a knife and a fork is just so bizarre. Just pick it up and break it off and eat it. Why are you cutting it with a fork? It's so bizarre. And she's like, here, bitter coffee. And so he's like, was Uncle Nori popular? And then when he takes a bite of the chocolate, he says something out loud, but we can't hear what he says. I think that the chocolate isn't any good. I feel like the chocolate's not good. I wonder if Yuri suffers the same fate as Rico from Kuroko's Basketball, where they're terrible cooks. She's a terrible cook, but he doesn't want to bitch to her face about it because it's her birthday and she made the chocolate. So instead he's like, son of a bitch, it's so... Ugh. but he doesn't want to say anything. So he pantomimes it out, and then he starts talking about the uncle. He said he was good at teaching table tennis. Kids who learn from him are still playing, which is interesting. And it looks like I guess maybe she pours liqueur into it, and maybe that's what he's saying. Ryuichi's style is like Nori-san's as well. Okay. So we find out that Nori-san, who was the florist, was also a table tennis coach. And that Ryuichi plays like his dad. Well, that's a big amount of drama because now the brother's coaching. So does he feel like an inferiority complex that he's not as good as his other brother that died, despite him not being a good businessman? What? And that's when Yuri's like, why is the old man so harsh? And he says, well, he's just always been hard on himself. And Ryu-chan hasn't called Auntie Imiko at all, has he? And he says he promised the old man he wouldn't call except for a memorial service. That is insane. That is insane that Ryu can't call his mom except when there's a memorial service to talk to her about it. What is with this family? Why is this family so weird? But yeah. So then he eats more of the chocolate and complains about it. And she says, why does he have to obey everything the old man says? And then we see, now, here's the thing. We see Taku don't cry. It says a man shouldn't let people see him cry. Don't show weakness to others. Now, Ryuichi Kazama, this is not him. I thought for a second that when he's in the bathroom, so Taku is the one that's here. Taku is the coach that's Yuri's dad. And we see him in the bathroom stall crying and being shown not to show weakness. Which, that whole moment in the bathroom of him in the stall, like crying it out there, and then we go back to episode 3 where Kazama was in the toilet just standing there in the same position as his uncle doing the same thing. This family has got some issues and working through some trauma. And he's like, they'll trip you up if you have these emotions. He's like, the old man took over Nori-san's failed business. Since he took it over, and he's eating all the chocolate there, the Nori family was shamed among their relatives. So basically, Nori's failed business was taken over by the grandpa. And everybody thought less of the family because of it. And it was almost sad. But then the old man's tune changed when he discovered that Ryuichi had a talent for table tennis. And the more he accomplished, the less people could mock Nori's family. Which is so interesting because the guy that started the Kaio school, which is Ryu, which is the old man, he's the one that was the hero. The one that Koizumi let go and that ended up forming the school and the whole industry, right? We will get that here in a second. So it's amazing that he kind of sees himself, and for him, Kazama is like his hero in a way, right? He's trying to carry his family, school, and the manufacturer on his shoulders. So yeah, Kazuma's trying to like live up to the family lineage, be the best in the school to carry up the school's lineage because they're all tied together, and then also carry the legacy of their family's business with the shadow of his father having a failed business in the background. Insane. Insane. And I like Yuri saying, I don't like it. Yuri's like, I don't like this. She's like, I want to arrange flowers. She's like, I don't want to do this stupid Poseidon business. I don't want to do all this. She's like, I want to do back what Nori and then what our family was doing, which is arranging flowers. And this part, she's like, I'm going to go study in London. And when Taku says, we don't have the money, you'd have to ask the old man. That just blew my mind. Like, they have this insanely huge house with the nice sports car, with all the endorsements. But him saying, I don't have enough money to send you to London to go to school is wild. Is wild. And that's so true because I know people who's like, there's a local family in my area who the grandfather, he has all these kids, and the grandfather has, it was something that happened recently. This grandfather, like, he had all these oil rights in our area, and he had all these gas stations and everything, right? And he had built this like empire in this local rural area. And he recently, rather than give the business to his kids to split up, he just sold it outright to somebody else. And a part of me is like, you have all these kids that thought they had a stake in the business of the family and would have a chance to have some of that money for their families. And you went, no, and just sold it to someone outside completely. That's what this reminds me of. And it blows my mind because it's so real. And she's like, I don't like him. She's like, I don't like the grandpa. She's like, I'll take care of it myself. And he's like, he's strict and scary, but he's a man of character. He knows a lot about etiquette and tradition, and he's a good businessman. I never would have come up with the pitch he's using to sell those mats and shoes. So he acknowledges, like, Taku's like, look, you may not like your grandfather, and he may be a shrewd businessman, but he's making the family money even if we don't have access to it. And I love that she puts the cocoa powder, and she's like, so what? And I love she just punches the table tennis racket. Like, I love that she hates that she can't be with Kazama, not because they're cousins or anything, but because of the table tennis legacy. Right? Which is so interesting because Koizumi believes that because of his actions, he was able to let this other guy build this empire and be this hero and do all this and do that. When in reality, within this structure that Koizumi thinks is such a great thing, his own family is kind of disheveled and completely dysfunctional. Like, it is just, it's soap opera drama that I love. So then we go back to the training, and Sanada is like, Kazama, do you know what today is? He's like, do you know? And then he says, you know, Yuri disguised herself to come watch. Like Sanada has been sitting here watching, and we connect all the dots from the previous episodes. Sanada's like, I saw Yuri there watching you. He's like, she came to watch herself since you said you couldn't come to the game. Right? Uh-huh. And then he's like, 1, 2, 1, 3. And then he's like, Yuri's here. She's here to give you chocolate. Why aren't you going to her? Like Sanada looks over and it's like, you can see her right there. You know what she's doing. Why won't you go to her? She wants you to like her. Why won't you? And I'm like, well, I'm kind of with Kazama. We're related. So why would you push that? But Sanada's like, why wouldn't you go to her? And he's like, what are you doing? And I love that Sanada is like, fuck it. I love it. I love that Sanada's like, that woman is offering you chocolates. She wants attention. She clearly wants someone to love her. And she's right in front of you, all but giving herself. And you're doing nothing. And then Sanada's like, screw it. You know what? And I love that he runs out with the bag. Like he's clearly had a plan with this, right? And he says, wait, I'm so proud of Sanada. Because he gives her the flowers, which are the crepe lilies, which she likes, right? Because we've seen them previously in another episode, which how he knows that could be kind of creepy. But he says, I'm Kazama's teammate. He introduces himself. I'm a second-year Masayuki Sanada. And we finally get his stuff. Inter-Eye top 4, National 16. Sanada, right-handed shake hand, offensive drive. And he says, I've always watched you from afar. Which could come across a little creepy, but he says, happy birthday. And then she's like, I'm so happy, which, yeah, she's like, they're Casablancas. Thank you. Like, somebody actually, to Yuri, she's like, oh my God, you actually noticed that it's my birthday. That's what I wanted people to do this entire day. Because, yeah, even though Kazama is training for table tennis and there's all this writing on his dedication, there's nothing wrong if he had just told her happy birthday and accepted the chocolates and then went back to exercising. Like, there would have been nothing wrong with that. But he can't do that. And Sanada finally got pissed and was like, I'm going to say something because otherwise I'm going to regret it. And I would rather Sanada put it all out there and her openly reject him than for him to creepily like keep staring at her poster jerking off without saying anything. You know? Like at least go up to her and have the guts to say it and accept whether she accepts it or rejects it. And she thanks him for the flowers. And he, puts the other hand out saying, what I love is that he doesn't just say, I love you and all this. Instead, he says, I know you love Kazama. He's like, he automatically is admitting that he understands he's been defeated. He doesn't stand a chance. He says, I know you love Kazama. I simply want you to know that I exist. Like that to me is the way, that's a great way for Sonata to do it. Where he's like, look, I know you love Kazama. I'm not trying to be a homewrecker. I'm not trying to dissuade you. I'm not trying to tell you not to love him. But I'm just letting you know that I'm here. And I want you to know I exist. Here's some flowers. Happy birthday. Just in case you decide that you don't want to wait around on your cousin. I want you to know I exist. And then I love that he sticks his hand out to shake her hand and he says, you're beautiful, ma'am. I love that he's so polite. He's like, by the way, you're beautiful, ma'am. Like, I'm so proud Sonata got that out there because I was like, dude, just say something to her. And he finally does. And he stays bowed and she's like, well, you can have this. And he says, yes, ma'am. I love he doesn't even stop for the bow. He just takes the bag. She's like, fine, you can have this since Kazama doesn't want it. And then she's like, see you later. And I love that he's like, I got some Kazama. Oh, I love this scene. I love this because he's finally like, you know what? You don't want to take her love. He's like, she is shoving it in your face and you're dishing it away. He's like, I got some chocolate Kazama. And it's the one with the handprint. He's like, what are you going to do? I love it. I love it. And then he's like, what will you be able to do, you table tennis junkie? Now, when he says, I'll take Yuri-san, I was like, she's not a prize to be won. She's not an object to be won, which I do. That's the one part about Sonata's obsession with her that I do worry about. I'm like, she's not a prize for you to own, right? So I'm like, I don't think she's yours to take from Kazama. But he's like, I'll beat you and take Yuri-san. I'm like, I don't think that she's yours to take away, but I do encourage Sonata to actually fight for her affection, to get her to notice you. And he's like, you got that. We'll go back to that with Yuri. But then we cut to the amusement park. I love that Smile and the old man are not in the same cart. They're both like in different ones. And he's like, isn't this fun? And he's like, you should smile if you're having fun. And Smile's like, I will smile when I'm having fun. Which he never smiles. He's like, ain't that the truth? He's like, are you having that much fun? He's like, is this what you wanted, Mr. Tsukimoto? Aww. And that's when he asks about the story of Butterfly Joe. He's like, I want to know the story. What's up with that? He was so cute when he was younger. Like the coach. He had like his big ears. I love how they make him. I love how his features are very distinct. You can tell it's still him. He just has black hair and his ears are a little bigger. It's super cute. But he's like, I was unrivaled. They called me the rising star in Japanese table tennis. And they assumed I'd represent Japan in the world championships. My opponent was someone I'd played against for as long as I can remember, which sounds a lot like Smile and Peco. He says he was pretty strong until he was diagnosed. It was diagnosed that he had damaged ligaments and the right knee would take 6 months to heal. Well, the right knee is exactly the same knee that Peco gets injured. So we're having history repeating itself, right? Right? And so he didn't withdraw. He's like, I would have. But I wasn't the one with the wrecked knee. It was his choice. He turned a deaf ear to those around him and played. And he'd easily be beaten with a long forehand with a backhand slide. And that's when Smile says that, and he's like, but could you do it? Could you have done it? To strike at an old friend's wound. Could you have done it? Take the dangerous path that would ruin his career. And so then they're setting this up for the same thing to eventually happen with Smile and Peco. They're setting the same thing up. Old friends, would you strike at that wound? Would you kick him when it hurt, where it hurts, and possibly ruin his career? They're setting that up. They are setting that up for us. But again, the thing about it is, what I think is different is that Koizumi assumes people's emotions, and he assumes his actions being what they would want him to do. And Obaba tells him, she's like, that's your biggest flaw, is that you assume what people think when you have no idea. So I think, and then we see him in the moment from episode 2 where he's in the locker room with the butterfly wings. And this must have been the moment after that competition when he lost intentionally. Mm-hmm. So what I think might be different that happens is that Smile does not assume that Peco wants him to go easy on him. And maybe he doesn't. And maybe Peco overcomes it anyway. I don't know where they're going to go with it. I'm curious, but I don't know where they're going to go with it. And so he's like, I focused my attacks on his forehand and ruined my own chances. And I never returned to the limelight after that. And my opponent, who played despite his injury, became a hero and a success. Because, yeah, he kept going on. His injury healed. And he ended up being this famous ping pong player. He rose rapidly to the world stage. And he is currently Kaio's director and Poseidon's representative, Ryu Kazama. Mm-hmm. So we have Ryu up here. Yep. Now, I would say Yuri looks a lot like Ryu in the fact that she has the same blue eyes as him. Mm-hmm. So intrigued. Yep. I do like the coach saying, he's like, he's like, let me say this. He's like, I'm not using you to get revenge. And I like that. I like the coach is like, look, I don't care about that match. That was a long time ago. I'm happy with where I'm at right now. I'm not using you to get revenge. And Smile's like, yeah, I know that. He's like, I want to show you the place reserved for those with talent. And I want you to be the best of the best. He's like, I know. Oh. And then we go back to Peco and Obaba. Mm-hmm. And so we touch base on Peco saying, is that my honey hitting those drives? And the one guy, Tanema, saying he's using the reverse side too. And he's like, yes, he used to drive with a soft reverse side when he was little. But he played on adult tables despite being a kid. When I remembered that and let him try, he got it right away. He's a sponge. He backs off against really strong guys, but he's a sponge that can just drive. Using the reverse side was his last resort. It got me thinking. His talent. You normally can't make sudden changes, but he can. So Peco's whole thing is his speed. His speed and his ability to adapt. That's the thing. And that's kind of, interestingly enough, something that Smile's not as good at. Smile's not as good as adapting. Smile's good at playing at his strengths and capitalizing on those strengths. But we've seen in the past when when the coach was trying to get him to adjust to a new technique, Smile was not very good at it. He's like, I don't like this. Whereas Peco picks up on it really instantly. He's like, but he can. His mind has a sponge-like absorption of a child's. And so she's like, but this is, large scale. This will completely change him into somebody different. And he's like, yes, his appeal is his speed. He needs to stand close. There's going to be a style that's better suited for him. I'm thinking. He's like, I'm still figuring it out. So then we say all the kids over here are Peco's siblings. There's like a whole herd of them. And they all look the same. They all have the same face. Yeah, there's 5 of them. 5 siblings of Peco's. And they all Peco's the eldest of 6. Oh my God. And they all have their mom's face. The one sibling has brown eyes. But yeah, she's got the same face. I'm like, girl, you having 6 kids? What? But they're taking him spare changes of clothes and food. Wild. I love it. Well, then Obaba is asking, I love that all the kids, all of Peco's siblings are just running around all over the place. It's got 2 on 2 there. And I like that Obaba's explaining what he needs to get. And then the one sibling's just playing with the table tennis thing right there. There's an army of little table tennis robots. Pico's entire family are little table tennis minions. Oh my God. She's like, that bothers me. The thing on his right knee. And he's like, oh, well, he says something feels off, so he keeps it on. I like Obaba's I've seen something like this in the past. I don't know. I don't really like where this is headed. He says it's no big deal, so don't worry. Baba's like, yeah, sure. Be careful. She's like, yeah, I don't know about that. He's a still wet behind the ears high schooler. Okay. Listen to the coach and apply yourself. He's like, are you leaving already, Obaba? She's like, don't worry. I love you. I'm so curious where they're going with this. I'm so curious. Meanwhile, I love that we get Oda and Smile practicing with the tennis balls. That's such a good scene. And I actually like that for once, like Smile kind of like tones it down to face Oda. Like that was such a good scene. I love that. He's like, I want to test them out to play with them. I love that. He's like, I'll go easy. And then they end up playing. He's like, I'm sure they are. They're totally different. Meanwhile, I wanted to see in this car, we get Yuri, and I wanted to see, is she by herself as she's driving down the road? Yeah. And she spins around like Yuri. She's so excited. I love it. I love the idea that she's like, someone noticed me on my birthday. And like that freedom of that moment. Oh, Sonata, you might have a shot, my friend. You might have a shot. And her by herself on the dock. I'm like, Sonata, you might be doing fine by the end of this series. We'll see. Meanwhile, Kong is playing against the robot. Trying to face up. I like the idea of Smile playing with the coach and Oda. Peco is with the table tennis team for the National Japanese Center. Kazama is facing off against who knows what. And then Kong is facing the robot too. I love it. I freaking love it. And we see the robot imitating Kazama. Meanwhile, back at Casa de Kazama, we have her walk in. And outside the door is the crate, is the Casablancas. Or, oh, wait, what did she say outside? So she opened up the door, right? So we had her opening up the door, and there was a vase with flowers on the floor. So the question is, what does the vase of flowers there at the end? Are they the flowers that Sonata got for her? Are they the flowers that she had on the bathroom that were there from earlier and she kicked them out? I wonder, okay, they don't look exactly like the Casablancas that Sonata got her. So these were the flowers she brought in when Cosmo was in the bathtub. So is she kicking out the flowers that she got when Cosmo was there? And is she now putting in the flowers that Sonata got her? This episode was amazing. I love this series and I love this episode so much. I am worried about Peco and the knee thing. Anytime you bring in like a sports injury or a knee brace or something, I instantly, like, my eye starts twitching and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this. And it seems awfully similar to this situation that's happened in the past. I don't know. But I guess we'll see, won't we? So yeah. Anyway, I'm super excited to hear your comments down below. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'm so excited, and I'll be back real soon with The Rule of 8, episode 8 of Ping Pong. See you then.